Here is the third in that sort of impromptu series that I've just done, going through three sort of levels of British bomber thinking, from that double winger that I can't remember the name of, Heyford, Handley Page Heyford, through the Wellesly, and now it evolves into the Wellington. So, good stuff. I'm a big fan of the Wellington. I think it's a wonderful aircraft and a real workhorse. So I'm very happy to be making one of these. And in this lovely little book, it has a rather nice write-up. It shows two different types, Mark 1 variants, and it singles out the Mark 8. And it really, books like this do stress the fact that it might have been a little bit old-fashioned by the time the Second World War broke out, but things like its endurance, its ability to take hits and to carry heavy loads relative to the fact it's only got two engines, really shows that it was a mighty plane of the time. This book says it entered service in 1938, which is interesting because people do criticise it and say it wasn't, you know, it was a bit behind the times. I can't see that myself. Just a bit, you know, can't carry the really massive loads because it's not bomb loads, because it's not big enough, that's all. And this book also says that they carried on being used long after the Second World War. So that tells you a lot about them, doesn't it? And rather nicely, this is the version with the very attractive Merlin engines, which gives it a sleek quality, I feel. Here we are, the first bit I've cut off the sprue, and the sprue is horrific. In fact, the plastic's quite brittle, but the sprue is really thick, and it was really like snapping the pieces off, even though I used a knife. Don't know if you can see the rather square points. Oh, I'm a bit close. See that? That's big for the modern era. Oh well, gonna have to be careful. Here's an interesting thing on the tail. There are no fixing points. I know it's got, you can see big rings there, but that's not them. There's absolutely nothing, which I know a grown-up can cope with, but you know. These engine parts also don't have any real fixing anythings. There is a recess along here that loosely fits into, but these do not have anything, and you've got to fit that thing in. You've got to fit that vent, in effect, in anyway. And it's a little bit too small, so it wanders about inside. So by using various sticks and ends of brushes, I have got one done, but absolutely no anchoring, nothing to keep anything parallel. And there's a little view of the interior. You can see quite a gap on the left hand side. Anyway, the next thing that's come up is, here's a machine gun going through the interesting angular window that goes on the side of the fuselage there, and on the other side. And I remember those from when I made it as a kid, when it was Airfix. And look, there's a blank panel. Checked on the box art and in the instructions, and what do you know, it's not there. So the instructions have got that information unnecessarily. This is quite weird. I'm not going to go wild on the interior this time. I know I've said it before, but to be quite honest, at times I've got carried away because I quite like the interiors, and particularly something like the cant and the Lysander that's going to come up. I'm still finishing that one off. Yeah, I've done a lot of detail on the interiors, and then you can't see any of it. So this time I'm going to try it the other way round and see how little you can get away with. Now, you don't get any figures, but I've saved one of these Airfix fellas up. I think he's out of a Fairy Sea Fox or something. One of my favourites. This is a very small 1/72 scale, and he's a very small figure. He comes with another one who's virtually the same figure but a lot bulkier, which is very interesting. that's old Airfix, but he fits just right. So I'm going to keep this interior simple. I've got this little fellow sitting in there, and I'm going to do the minimum to see just how bad these things get. Hopefully not too bad. I want the undercarriage doors to be closed, and very often this is a bit of a problem, but in this case this might be the worst I've come across. Just that single door is covering well over half the aperture, so there's going to be some serious trimming. I'm already getting messy under this side. It's going to need a good clean up, but so I'm going to paint the gun turret things and then glue the sides together. Minimal interior. That's the green coat done, and I've seen a few versions of British bombers where the wavy line along the fuselage is irregular, so I tried that. I thought it would be easier. Turns out for some strange reason it's harder. Just worth mentioning, there was a massive seam down the whole of the top of the fuselage, and I did think, oh, I'm not really doing this kind of thing, and I'm just going to make the model as is. But once I got the green paint on, it really showed up pretty bad. I should have shown a picture of it. And I thought, if I have to sand that down using something, I'm going to take so much of the detail away, it's unbelievable. So in the end I got a Stanley knife blade out. Don't do this at home. Any young people, do not use knives, all of that kind of thing. I'll show you my mutilated finger one day that I managed to do with a Stanley knife blade. Anyway, so I cut as finely as possible. I cut the raised edge down to size, but that's a long and heavy duty seam. I usually have them and I usually let them go, but this was really quite big. So there we are, just as I was doing the brown, just a sort of undercoat to mark out where I should be, I thought, come on, let's show this one off. Yeah, it was pretty big. It's a bit ironic that you get this ridge when there were actually fixing points and I was whinging about them. So I don't know if it's me or them. But, yeah. Well, the paint job's moved on. Once I'd got both colours on it, the contrast seemed a bit vivid. So I toned down the green. That was definitely a bit too strong. And then the brown looked a bit too much. And it all looked a bit like it was from a kind of cover of a graphic novel or something. Very, very strong colours. So they've toned down and I'm happier with them. But unfortunately, that horrible seam still isn't quite where I want it, so I'm going to have to fill that, then smooth it down, then repaint. So, bit of a shame. Mind you, you get all these spares. Even get spare tail bits. Maybe I should get one of those Airfix RAF crash sets with the crane and the trailer vehicle. Now I could stick them in it, couldn't I? Clean them up a bit, give them a bit of sort of authenticity. Here's the Wellesly and the Wellington side by side. You can see one's, well, you can kind of see that one's an evolution of the other. Certainly the same designers involved, and there's this nicely balanced wing slightly back along the fuselage on the Wellington, and both of them really quite wide wingspans. So at last, there it is done. It's a wonderful plane, a slightly strange modelling experience. The model felt sort of recalcitrant, like it wasn't that interested in being made. I've never really experienced that before, and I've never really thought in those terms. So other models do want to be made. They make it easy for you to do them. And this one just wasn't into it. So I kind of lost it a bit. So I'm going to have to buy another version, see if I can get a hold of an old Airfix one, and make that and really enjoy myself. So yeah, here we are. As for the aeroplane, I was thinking maybe I need to do a sort of fantasy football version of the Battle of Britain Memorial Flight, or whatever it's called, and I would have a Hawker Hurricane and a Wellington, and might be interesting to have something like a Gloucester Gladiator. So that's my thoughts on the topic. Anyway, there we have a great aeroplane and an odd model. Well, there's 3 British bombers done, so what should we do next? Something different. Possibly, I don't know, vehicle. I've got a Jeep somewhere. Yeah, we'll see how the Jeep goes. Thanks for watching, everybody. And, yeah, keep modelling, have fun, all of that kind of thing.